Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
Seasoned salespeople will adhere to a sales process, a system with a predictable outcome. But does that really work when selling newly launched products? Think about it. What objections and stalls do you hear when selling a new product or service? If I've created a new interest in selling newly launched products, turn up the volume as Bill and I discuss how to sell new products and other interesting ideas on episode 592 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
Well, Scott, this is interesting because I know in the Spin Selling, he had a chapter on new products. I don't know if that prompted some of your thinking.
It did.
But he did bring up some of the problems with that. So this will align with the book club, which, of course, we are getting near the end of Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. We're on chapter 7, opening the call. And it's all the stuff about we've been taught about how do we open a sales conversation. And obviously, Neil doesn't like the way it's been done traditionally because he's got a better way of doing it. So we've been taught it's been crucial to make that good first impression. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, there's no chance for the conversation or the relationship to go well, right?
Right.
So he doesn't think that's true. And he says it's not true because he's hard to find good evidence. So he's seen bad sales opening that actually do result in a sale. And he's seen a good opening, smooth, that ends up in no sale. So, but I think that's always true, right? We can do everything right and still not get a sale. We can do exactly what Neil says and not get a sale. I can identify many times where I thought everything was going great and the customer said, I'm going to think about it. And they thought about it forever. Mm-hmm. I do think that he does make some points. We don't want to be unpresentable. Mm-hmm. You know, we have to have the right outfit on, the right clothing, have our hair done, not have a scraggly beard with food in it. I think that's good. And I think that an interesting point he made, though, Scott, was that he said that most people, you and your person you're meeting with, the prospect, are so overwhelmed with the amount of new information coming at them. A new person, I'm trying to meet them, I'm trying to get to know them a little bit. We're trying to see if we got something in common. And that they just don't remember whether we had a good opening or what our opening was.
Right.
So what are your thoughts kind of on that?
I think the opening is really important. And he talks a little bit about dress for success, which I think has been a little kind of tapped down a little bit. That's not as critical anymore. Yeah.
I think now you can wear shorts and dungarees and your jammies and
exactly. So there's a lot more casual work environment. So he talks a little bit about that. He also talks a lot about comparing smaller sales and bigger sales, and there's a contrast between
that's
those
a first. He's never compared small sales and big sales in this book yet.
What?
Except in every chapter.
Every chapter, yeah. I mean, every chapter is this works in small sales. But the longer sales,
right?
Bigger sales, longer sales process, and a different approach. But I think that he brings up a very good point. Building that trust and rapport at the beginning, so people are not guarded. And they're not hesitant, and they want to share information. And then when a salesperson asks a good qualifying question, they're going to get an honest answer. If you don't have trust and rapport, you're not going to get an honest answer. Prospects always put themselves
and I don't think he
light.
went into the trust and rapport very much.
No, he didn't. But the first impression was kind of underlying with that trust and rapport and reducing the concerns and guarded salespeople that are being overly protective or guarded.
Yeah. I do think that it's important to develop enough trust that they will actually answer your questions. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a mistake to go in there with guns blazing and say, let me start asking. It's not, as you and I have said many times, it's not an interrogation.
Right. Yeah.
It's a conversation. So 2 conventional openings that he brings up relate to personal interest, the idea of, kind of looking at their office and seeing if they've got, as I do in the background on mine, a lot of Twins paraphernalia. We can talk about baseball, right? So we'll talk about the problems we have with that. And then the other thing is to make an opening benefit statement. Mm-hmm. And that is basically getting to the point and say, here's the reason I'm here. We think we are very good at doing this, and let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. Now, have you ever used the opening benefit statement?
I have, and I usually use that in the form of a qualifying statement because I do not want to be assumptive. I want to say something that creates some relevance to the conversation so the prospect knows that there's something that they can look forward to. And I learned this when we interviewed Anthony Iannarino. He's been on the show twice. Is he said the goal when making a phone call is to create interest and curiosity. And if you can create interest and curiosity, create a strong value proposition, and create that initial benefit statement that that the book talks about, I think you're going to really cause people to look forward with anticipation that this is going to be a worthwhile conversation and not something that's irrelevant. And so often salespeople just don't engage the customer or the prospect in a relevant conversation to create interest and curiosity.
When you say call, do you mean a phone call or a sales call?
A phone call, even a meeting.
Yeah, I think those are two very different things.
How so?
If I make a phone call, I've got to hit some benefit statement to catch their attention, see if they'll have a reason to meet with me. I have to create this reason to meet with me. So I have to make some guesses.
Sure.
But when I get into a meeting, I assume they've got some kind of a reason for meeting with me. Otherwise, they're not going to take the time to sit down with me for half an hour and have a conversation. So if I make a phone call and I say, hey, look at this, what I do, I help people with their sales process and magnify their salespeople's ability to get things done. Oh yeah, I'll sit down with you. Okay. Well, there's a need that's already established.
Right. Well,
otherwise you wouldn't meet. So when I open up a call of a sales call, a meeting, I usually say, hey, Scott, it's really good. I'm glad you're willing to meet with me. In order for us to know whether we can help you or not, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Yeah.
I don't start with an opening benefit statement because that was already done. Now I'm opening with the sales discussion. So I might talk a little bit about, where you're from and how do you do and where'd you grow up and some of those things. But then I get into the questions fairly quickly.
And that's a great practice, as long as I think on that first phone call, you establish at least 3 reasons why somebody would want to meet with you. They invite you in so that they feel like they're the host and you're the guest. And as you start that meeting, you say, I just want to kind of reiterate some of the things we talked about when we talked on the phone is, these 3 areas sound like they're most important. And these are some of the areas that you'd like to talk about today. Is that still the case? So
you do a good job on setting the agenda.
Thank you.
I think you've always done that well.
And I want to know how much time we have. I want to know what's changed since the last time we talked. And I want to know what other topics they've thought about between the conversations that we can introduce to the priority list today, because I want them to tell me what's most important to them.
Yeah.
And I want to concentrate on delivering the top 3.
Well,
or addressing the top 3.
And I'll tell you what, I think Neil Rackham should add that to his book.
Yeah,
because I do think that you do an excellent job of establishing that this is going to be a business meeting. We're going to talk about what's important to you. I'm glad you're a Twins fan, but we're not going to spend an hour talking about that. I do think some people get wrapped up in that conversation and use their whole meeting time talking about something that's inconsequential, really, to establish rapport. So follow Scott's example on here. I think this is really good. Find out what their objectives are, quantify the time that you're going to have, establish, 1 or 2 reasons for sitting down, and then have a good conversation based on that.
Another thing I'd like to add based on that section is he talks about, that benefit opening statement. And he also says you have to have some variety in it, because if you keep using the same one over and over again, it's going to sound mechanical and scripted. And a lot of salespeople, I think, over prepare sometimes before they make a phone call. They over research before they make a phone call. You don't need to spend 25 minutes doing research before you make an attempt, which is a cold call to somebody that you've never talked to before.
And 90% of the time, you're not going to get hold of them.
Right. And they may have been gone. They may have left. I mean, who knows what has changed since the last time they updated the website? Or maybe there's stuff going on behind the scenes that the website is totally a facade and none of it is real within the company. So we can be misled by over-researching versus looking at some of the industry trends that are going on within that company, and then common interests and challenges and goals that those companies have. I can really see a connection with spin selling and challenger sale.
Yeah. Well,
because
he
we
did write the
recommend
forward to
both.
that. So
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what he suggests, and as we're going to wrap this section up, focus on your objections and establish who you are, why you're there, but you don't start selling your product. And I think that's a real good piece of advice. So many
Yep.
salespeople start telling about their product when
Yep.
really what they're trying to do is just introduce the concepts or the issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're right to ask questions, which is my question. Hey, look, in order for us to really be able to talk together, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me the permission to go into the prepared questions. But so I think that kind of a mix of what we're doing, establish what you're there for, establish a time frame, make sure that anything they want to talk about is going to be covered as you go over the agenda, get the permission to ask questions, and then start asking good questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's lead to the solution, not lead with the solution. That's not a challenge or sale. And that's why I see the common ground here between the two authors.
So I think that's a good way to open, and some good advice. Don't get yourself caught in the same old way of doing it, and don't start the same way every time, because it's going to start to sound rote when you've met with that person. Many big sales, you meet with the person 3-4 times. So,
yeah, exactly.
All right, next week, Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, Chapter 8. This is our last chapter.
Wow.
Turning theory into practice. So how do we start making things happen? Which is some good ideas I've already I've read ahead a little bit. So
wow, great.
Good. Our next book is The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann. So if you don't have The Go-Giver and you want to follow along, well, I think we're just using the paperback edition if we were going to use page numbers, but The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann.
Yeah. I'm glad we did Spin Selling. Everybody listening, you can say, hey, I listened to Spin Selling on the Winning at Selling podcast, and I felt like I got a great concept for the book. And if there's other books that you want to have us do, Bill and I, please let us know. Send us an email. Go to the website winningatselling.com and give us some feedback.
Yeah, and if you haven't kind of caught the rhythm, what we do is we go into a hard sales book like Spin Selling or Challenger Sale, and then we'll go into something that's more personal development oriented, like The Go-Giver or How to Win Friends and Influence People. So kind of bouncing back and forth. Now we're going to go to The Go-Giver, which is more general. And then next time we'll go to a harder sales book. So if you have a sales book you really like and you want us to cover it and we haven't covered it yet, we'll be glad to do that.
So our topic today is how to sell new products. This is from the Harvard Business Review. I read this article in the November-December issue from 2018, and it's volume 96, issue 6. And
2018, you're going back in the archives.
I am. I read this article, and I would say I have a good friend named Bob Freitag who launches medical device companies. He doesn't release medical device companies or products, but he launches medical devices. And I told him about this article because it's such a different approach to selling existing products and services and new products and services. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that you mentioned, Bill, was we talked about spin selling in selling new products. So I want to just start with, this is based on research. So 500 professional B2B salespeople were interviewed, and here's what the authors found when they were interviewing salespeople. And the common challenges is they felt that prospects were leading salespeople on to stay informed. So getting
information.
Yeah. So a salesperson calls up a prospect and the prospect says, yeah, I'm interested in meeting with you. There's no real interest in buying, but there's a lot of interest and curiosity. And sometimes salespeople can fall into that going, hey, I got a hot one. And then you go and you meet with them and they pepper you with a bunch of questions, the prospect does. And then, they get really excited and you end up sharing more information with them. And then there's never a sale, but you ended up telling them everything that you're doing so that they can feel like they're up to speed on what's going on. And sometimes they can be leading salespeople on. We need to be able to manage that conversation to be able to know, are you really inviting me in to learn about this? Or do you just want to watch something that's cool and new? And I've seen this with some of the clients that I've worked with where they have a new product and they do have it is a dazzling solution, but we really have not been real clear as to what problem it solves. And a lot of people are interested in seeing the demo, but very few take it to the next step.
And I think it's okay. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's really hard to qualify somebody who's trying to use you on the phone, because they'll still they'll lie to you. If they're going to lie to you once, they'll lie to you more than once, right?
Right,
So,
right.
so, but I do think that if your sales process is telling and you're
Hmm.
so excited about this product, you're going to start to barf all over them,
Right, right.
then you're going to get what you deserve. If
Yep.
you have 10 good questions written down, you might have heard that from me before. If you have
Hmm.
10 good questions written down that are qualifying the prospect, then you're going to put the ball in your court. And every time they ask a question, you can turn it around and ask them a question.
Right.
And they say,
The
well, will it
reverse.
do this? And you can say, well, how would you use that feature?
Hmm.
Oh, well, now the ball's back in their court instead
Right,
of how would you do this? And then you give away all your trade secrets.
right,
So
right.
learn how to ask good questions and you won't get trapped in this telling about the new information.
Yeah, yeah. The next one is that there's a high level of skepticism. So prospects are very skeptical about anything new and better that's cheaper because it's like, what did you take away that you're not telling me? And they're very concerned about any changes
Yeah, and is
because
it
they
going to
don't
really
know.
work?
Right.
Right? Is it
Yeah.
going to work
Yeah.
as good as the old? I like the old one because it was reliable. I think
Hmm.
that the interesting thing on this too is if you've ever looked at the number, what is it? The early adopters,
Yeah.
the people
Yeah.
who like the newest, that's maybe 5 to 6% of the
Yeah.
population.
Right.
And then most of them are in that kind of that second tier, that waiting tier.
Yep.
And then there's the laggards. That's me. I'm a laggard for
Yeah. Yeah.
technology. I wait for it to be cheap. But that second tier is skeptical. That
Hmm.
first tier is excited. If you can
Hmm.
find those 5%, you can say, we got into something new, and they'll say, get it to me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that second tier where the majority of people live, that is, you're right, they're very skeptical.
You're referring to the book Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. And then a second book is called Inside the Tornado on launching new technology. So those are the two books that talk about crossing the chasm that Bill's referring to if you want to learn more about that. The third one is prospects are guarded with the cost of change. So they need to understand the process,
Mm.
assess and evaluate the risk and the people issues associated with the change. And this is
So
where you
what
got
is this? What's going to happen here if I do this new
right.
thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And how much work is this going to cause? I'm doing some work with a small organization right now, and I'm doing weekly classes, and I'm sharing content with them. And then we start every session with, what did you do since the last time we met? And they said, well, we've been upgrading the Salesforce, so I have not been able to sell very much lately because I've been learning how to use Salesforce.
That's a good
Okay.
excuse.
I mean, that's a change. There is time that you need to spend learning something new. But I think sometimes when you end up just going in the right direction, you'll find the answers along the way and not just spend time learning about Salesforce without just applying the need for it during your daily activities is my belief. But that's
Yeah, there's
also,
always a reluctance, isn't there, to
yeah,
make
yeah.
that change. And so that's why we talk about doing what you inspect, not what you expect. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever we work with sales managers, if you're asking them to do something different, being passive and never talking to them about it again is pretty much a guarantee they're not going to make the change
Yeah.
that you want them to make. But I think we've talked about this too. Whenever we're trying to work with a new company, the whole idea of bringing on a new vendor can be a ponderous
Mm-hmm.
issue and a barrier for you to make a sale. So it's
Right.
not just that the product changes, but if I have to bring on a new vendor, I can be reluctant to do that from a purchasing standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got 7 of these. So this is number 4 is the salesperson needs to establish a new buying criteria before a sale can be made. So this is where the RFPs come in. Salespeople need to be able to look at creating a new criteria that a prospect follows in making a new decision to their product over continuing to maintain and keep their existing system.
Mm.
So creating a new buying criteria, I think, is really important for salespeople when it's a new product.
And
Another one is
if you can create that, sometimes you can cut out the other vendors.
you play to your strengths.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, really play to your strengths, include the stuff that you offer as your leading benefits, competitive benefits, exclusive benefits. That's going to decommoditize your product or service. The next one is the prospect is risking their internal reputation on a new product or service. So we need to be able to maintain their dignity because they're putting their reputation when they're a champion for us, and make sure that they are well prepared for any objections that they may hear internally that you're not going to be present for. And the more prepared they are, the more confident they are going to be in the change, and the more confidence that they're going to have in you as a salesperson on providing information. And then the last couple of points is in selling new products, these professional salespeople spend 20 or they spend 35% more time with customers post and pre-sale, and 32 more face-to-face meetings, and 30% more time on cross-functional teams. So as they get into a company, they end up having 30% more time involving other people in the decision of making a purchase and really changing what they're existingly doing. So there is a lot more time. So we really need to look at the long game and the long term benefits of that. And then lastly is that there is a lot of confusion between product knowledge and market knowledge. When a new product is launched, the product development team is really excited about it. They really concentrate on it. They want to get their sales team together, and they want to teach the sales team everything there is to know about the product. I'm not saying that that's bad, just saying that there are other areas that they should also include in that. And one of the areas is market knowledge, and then getting into sales skills as to how we sell this differently than our existing products or services. So Bill, anything you wanted to add on those challenges overall?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily how we sell it differently, how we don't get ourselves caught in these traps and think about you can't just get excited because it's a new product. It's got to be, what does it do better for the customer, and get focused on these new features and benefits so that they can feel comfortable making the change. But I think it's really good to think about how difficult it is for companies to make change, people to make change, all the ramifications that are associated with it. It's not just, it's a new product. You see it in a totally different way than your customer sees it.
And as a salesperson selling a new product and going into a prospect that's using an existing system, I think it's important to identify what's the cost, consequences, and risk of not changing, because you're competing with inaction, people doing nothing different. And then taking that cost on a monthly basis times 12, and then taking that number times 5. And now you've got what the cost of it over the next 5 years is going to be if you don't make a change. That is going to be compared to the price of the new service, plus all of the other expenses and collateral changes that need to be made when there is a change in a procedure.
All right.
But let me just highlight a brief sales process, and then we're going to get into a successful rep, 5 things that a successful rep does when it comes to new products. So a sales process is, there's a sales inquiry, there's need recognition, we're doing an evaluation, inquiry, asking questions. Number 4 is we get into the solution development and the presentation. Then there gets to be a decision, step 5, and then step 6 is there's after sale maintenance. So the context of a successful rep is kind of built on that common sales practice. I think everybody can agree that there's more common ground there than differences. But one of the things on a successful rep is they take the long view, and we talked about spending more time with customers and prospects. So we have to invest it for greater future results. So take the long-term view, and this is important for management and also salespeople. Salespeople don't get frustrated. Managers allow the salespeople to be creative on their approach and to be able to work with somebody that is a little bit more apprehensive, and don't pressure them or come across as being desperate. I think that's really important in the behavior.
Yeah, when I thought about this, I'm thinking about, I've got a new product. I want to introduce it to my best clients, but I would consider introducing it to some of my smaller clients first, practicing on them before I introduced it to my bigger clients and took a chance. So practice on smaller, less volatile clients before you introduce it to your big clients.
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. Number 2 is they have different concerns. So the prospects have different concerns. There's a lack of evaluation criteria. Switching costs are misleading, and unproved information may be incomplete. So a successful rep is going to recognize that and deal with some of those concerns up front, and not get too sort of overcommitted to what you currently have, but really focus more about what the prospect is looking for when it comes to making a change. And then with that conversation, you're getting more information about how the solution can evolve to the 2.0 version too, after it gets launched.
I think an interesting thing too is acknowledge how difficult the change might be, or you bring up as the salesperson, I realize you're going to have to do X, Y, Z in order to integrate this new idea or this new thing. So let them know that you understand where they're coming from, and that will bring some of those out.
Yeah,
and allow
exactly.
those to be said rather than to be hidden.
Yeah, I love it. Get on the same side of the table with the prospect and argue against the challenge that they're dealing with and find out a solution together. And it's going to be more of their decision than a salesperson's decision. Number three is they exhibit more resolve. So they really have grit. And these successful salespeople know that the process is going to change. So don't feel like the rug is being pulled out from underneath you. I think we need to be able to work with the salespeople that love new items. And when they love new items, they feel like they can go out to the marketplace and they have a new item for somebody because the customers have been complaining. But you need to be prepared for customers that are begging and bragging for something new, because you could be a little bit unprepared if you don't position it differently with an existing prospect. But like you said, Bill, get with the smaller ones. They're easier to work with. They can make decisions faster, and it could be that competitive edge that they're looking for.
And you'll learn what questions to ask.
Right. Yeah.
You'll learn what problems come up. You'll learn what things are barriers so that you don't waste your new product when you're not ready to sell it on your best customer.
Yeah. Number four, this is the longest section in the article, and it's on having a learning mindset. So they break the mindset down differently. The reps with the learning orientation spend more time acquiring new sources of information and experimenting with different strategies and less time selling, versus the performance-oriented salesperson, which has a tendency to create more of a system or a process and repeats a similar process all the time, versus learning more about the process and working with the customer to find out what's most important. So comparing those two. They're making a conscious trade-off in the period of active learning, yielding that long-term payoff.
Right.
So we know that we're playing the long game in the mindset. It has to be really important in the mindset. And once they understand the market and have found the effective strategies, their performance eventually stabilizes at a higher level than those of the performance-oriented peers. So the performance-oriented peers that didn't do anything different, the learning-oriented salespeople end up spending a little bit more time in the beginning, but then end up rising up and surpassing the performance-based salespeople over time. So the payoff then gets to be more of a return. And I mentioned this earlier within the mindset is the managers demonstrate that giving salespeople time to experiment and learn about the market is payoff in the long run. So you have to weather those early performance dips that salespeople are kind of not generating the quota or the reputation that they have of production.
I think development, the development team who brought out the new product or service, they're under the impression that because we have this new product, customers are going to flock to our door and beg us. They don't understand the barriers, I think, sometimes that the sales team faces. And this whole area really reinforces what I said about starting with your smaller customers, learning what the market strategy is, learning what the questions are, learning what the barriers are to this new product or service before introducing it into your bigger customers. Then you've had the practice, you've had the learning that they talk about, and you can use that new found knowledge for the bigger clients.
Yeah. The last one, number 5, is they are knowledgeable, customer focused, and adaptable. So salespeople need both product knowledge and market knowledge. And the market knowledge is really understanding the market trends and the customer's buying patterns. That's going to be really important because that's going to create relevant conversations. And we all know what it's like as a salesperson to have an irrelevant conversation with a prospect. And when we are a customer, salespeople are customers, we know how frustrating it can be to have an irrelevant conversation with a salesperson. So we know that frustration can be there. So those are the 5 tips on the successful reps. This is a long article. I mean, Bill and I could have talked about this for 3 hours going through this article. We'll have a link again on our show notes for this article. I encourage you, if you sell new products, this is very advantageous to be able to get a little bit more context on how the market is different than existing products.
Excellent. All right. So our golden nugget as we wrap things up for this episode is from Paul Hogan, who played Crocodile Dundee, kind of came from nowhere to be a superstar. He said, "The secret to my success is that I bit off more than I could chew and chewed as fast as I could." And sometimes that's the way we need to be successful. When we get ourselves overcommitted, get going, get to work. There's nothing more productive than somebody who's really overcommitted. And we've all felt that way when we have 2 days left before our vacation.
Right, exactly.
And we've got to get all this stuff done. And man, do we get efficient. So bite off more than you can chew.
I did that last week, Bill. So thanks for covering the podcast for me as I prepared for vacation. And then I came back and I had to chew really fast to get caught up. And I'm still chewing fast to get caught up.
That's right.
Everything we talked about will be on the show notes. This is episode 592. And I really highly recommend all of our listeners check out psamn.org. The Professional Sales Association. Bill's the president of the organization. I'm the past president. We've got a guest coming on Friday, the 1st of December. It's going to be too late because the podcast is going to air after that. John Baker is going to talk about the asking formula. But if you join PSA, you might get access to a video recording of the presentation, so you will not be left behind. PSAMN.org.
All right. Next week, our book club, still finishing up Spin Selling. Chapter 8, turning theory into practice. And I think that's very important. How do we get things going? How do we do something? How do we make changes? And then the topic is get ready for 2024. That's right on our doorstep.
Right. It is.
Please subscribe, share the podcast with your colleagues on your social media. Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.